The Hook, the deep space outpost, floated on the edge of human territory, silent and small against the endless black sky, its lights blinking like a lonely star in the darkness, and inside it, men and women worked night and day, guarding the border between humans and the unknown. On this night, the medic of the outpost sat in his small room, his hands tired from long hours, his eyes heavy yet his mind sharp, because in space accidents were never far away, and when they came someone had to save lives. He was not a soldier, not a commander, just a man with knowledge of medicine, but sometimes in war, even a medic could change the fate of many. The silence broke suddenly with a sharp alarm, red lights flashing across the corridor, voices rushing through the comms, and the order came fast. Incoming distress call from alien ally ship, prepare medical bay. The medic stood up at once, his tiredness gone, his heart racing. An alien ally? This was unusual, for the alien species called the Seraphim rarely asked humans for help. Minutes later, the airlock opened with a hiss and guards entered, their faces hard, their hands close to their weapons. Between them walked a figure tall and graceful, wrapped in a cloak dark with blood. It was a Seraphim officer, female, her silver skin glowing faintly, her eyes bright like molten gold, but now her steps weak, her breath heavy. The medic saw at once the wound on her side, deep and dangerous. "Bring her here, quickly," he said, his voice calm though his heart pounded. The guards obeyed, laying her on the bed in the medical bay. The room filled with tension, for humans and Seraphim were allies yet never close, and most had never seen one of them up close, let alone touched one. The medic moved fast, cutting away part of her cloak to reach the wound, his hands sure, his tools ready. The bleeding was strong, but he had seen worse. He pressed gauze, cleaned the wound, prepared the sealant. She winced, her golden eyes locking on his face, sharp and burning. "You, human," she whispered, her voice soft yet filled with weight. "Be careful." "I am always careful," he answered, keeping his tone steady, though he felt the eyes of her guards on him, cold and full of warning. He worked with focus, sealing the wound layer by layer until his hand, moving quick, slipped lower than it should have. It was not on purpose. It was not desire. It was only the rush of his work, the hurry to save her life. But his hand brushed against a part of her body that was not supposed to be touched. Not by strangers. Not by humans, not even in battle. The effect was instant. Her body stiffened. Her eyes widened and a sharp gasp escaped her lips. Not from pain, but from something deeper, something almost sacred. The guard shouted, one of them drawing his weapon, ready to strike, but the Seraphim officer raised her hand weakly, stopping them. The medic froze, his hands lifted, his heart thundering. It was an accident," he said quickly, his voice almost breaking the silence. "I was only trying to help." But the look in her eyes was not anger. It was something else, a strange mix of shock, confusion, and fear. She looked at him as if he had done something impossible, something forbidden, and yet something that could not be undone. The guards lowered their weapons slowly, still glaring at him with hatred. The medic stepped back, sweat on his forehead, his mind racing. What had he just done? Why did a simple touch cause such a reaction? The alien officer turned her face away, breathing hard, whispering in her own language words he could not understand. Her voice was soft, almost trembling, and her guards bowed their heads as if her words carried heavy meaning. The medic felt the weight of the moment pressing on him, heavy as the silence that followed. He had treated many injuries in his life, but never had a patient looked at him with such burning eyes. Never had a single touch carried such danger. He did not know it yet. But that one mistake, his hand slipping to a place forbidden, was about to change everything. The Council of Seraphim would hear of this. The humans would be judged, and he, the simple medic who only wished to save lives, would soon stand in the center of a storm that could decide the fate of two species. For now, though, the room was silent, filled only with the sound of her breathing, the cold gaze of her guards, and the heavy beating of his own heart. The accident was small, yet its shadow was great, stretching into the unknown future where war, betrayal, and destiny waited, and deep inside he knew, though he did not want to believe it, he had touched more than a wound. He had touched a secret, the forbidden touch. The medic did not sleep that night. He sat alone in the corner of the medical bay, staring at the alien officer who now rested under dim blue lights. Her wound was sealed, her breathing steady, yet her presence filled the room with heavy silence. He could still feel the moment his hand had slipped, the way her golden eyes had widened, the way the guards had almost killed him in that instant. He told himself again and again it was an accident, nothing more. But his heart knew the truth. Whatever he had touched, it was not just flesh. It was something sacred, something hidden in the culture of her people. Hours passed and the door slid open. 2 Seraphim guards entered, tall, armored, their faces carved from stone, their eyes locked on him with cold fury. One spoke in sharp words, his voice like metal scraping stone. "Human medic, stand, come." The medic rose slowly, his chest tight, his hands trembling though he tried to steady them. He followed the guards through the long corridor, the sound of boots echoing against steel walls. Other humans stared as he passed, whispering, confused, afraid. They knew something was wrong, but none dared to speak. The guards led him into a small chamber lit by pale white light. The alien officer sat upright on a chair, wrapped in a new cloak of dark silk, her wound healed but her expression unreadable. Her golden eyes pierced through the silence, locking on him. "Leave us," she commanded softly. The guards bowed and stepped out, though they hesitated before sealing the door. Now it was just the 2 of them. The medic swallowed. I am sorry," he said quickly, his voice breaking. "I never meant disrespect. I was only trying to save your life." She did not answer at once. Instead, she studied him, her gaze heavy and unblinking as though she searched for truth inside his soul. Finally, she spoke. "You touched where no human should touch," she said, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Do you know what that means in my people's law?" He shook his head, his throat dry. "No, I don't." Her golden eyes narrowed. "Among the Seraphim, that place is bound to the ritual of bonding. It is touched only when 2 souls are joined for life. No stranger, no healer, no enemy may ever cross that line. To do so is dishonor. To do so is to claim a bond you cannot break." The medic's heart froze. "Bond? For life?" He stepped back, his legs weak. "It was a mistake. I had no choice. I was saving you." Her hand rose, silencing him. "I know," she said softly. "I saw it in your eyes. There was no lust, no plan, only haste. But the bond does not ask why. The bond only answers, and it has answered." The medic felt the weight of her words crash down on him. "What happens now?" he whispered. She looked away for the first time, her face shadowed. "Now my people will judge. Some will demand your death. Others will see destiny in what you have done. For the bond is rare even among us, and never before with a human." The silence grew thick. The medic felt as if the walls closed in, his breath heavy. He thought of the guards, of the sharp weapons they carried, of the trial that might come. But most of all he thought of her eyes, the strange fire in them when he touched her, a fire that frightened him as much as it pulled him closer. Suddenly the door burst open. The guards returned, faces grim. "Council demands her presence," one barked, "and the human comes too." The officer rose slowly, her cloak sweeping the floor. She looked at the medic one last time, her expression unreadable. "Stay close," she said quietly, almost a whisper. He followed her through winding halls until they reached the great chamber of the outpost. Humans stood on one side, Seraphim on the other, the air thick with tension. At the center rose a high platform where a circle of alien elders waited, their silver skin glowing under the lights, their eyes burning like suns. One elder stood. His voice boomed through the chamber. "This human has touched the sacred place of a Seraphim officer. He claims accident. She claims restraint. But law is law. What shall be done?" Murmurs filled the chamber. Humans shifted uneasily, their leaders frowning. Seraphim whispered among themselves, their faces a mix of anger and fear. The medic stood frozen, every eye burning into him, every breath heavy with judgment. Then the alien officer stepped forward. "I will speak," she said firmly. Silence fell at once. "Yes, he touched where no hand should go. But it was in saving my life. If not for him, I would lie dead, and the bond of life would be broken before it began. Do not see only shame. See the truth. A human has risked his life for one of us. The bond has chosen, though none of us willed it." Gasps spread through the Seraphim crowd. The word bond echoed again and again, carried like a storm. The elders stared, their faces unreadable. The medic felt his knees weaken, his pulse hammering in his ears. He had come here to heal, not to break laws, not to claim bonds, not to stand before alien judgment. And yet here he stood, accused, defended, and bound by something he could not escape. The elder raised his hand. Then let it be known. This matter will not be solved tonight. We will gather the full council. Until then, the human remains under guard. Council. Until then, the human remains under guard. The chamber erupted with voices, angry, fearful, confused. Guards surrounded the medic at once, pulling him back, their eyes full of hate. He struggled, but the officer looked at him once more, her eyes burning with something strange. Pity, or perhaps something deeper. The human medic had crossed a line no one dared cross. The forbidden touch was no longer a mistake. It was a chain, binding him to a destiny larger than himself. And as he was dragged away, he wondered with dread. Was this the start of war, or the start of something far more dangerous? The secret of her species. The medic sat inside a cold chamber, its walls of steel shining under dim light, 2 Seraphim guards standing at the door like statues. His wrists were not bound, but he knew he was a prisoner. Hours passed like shadows crawling across the floor, and no word came. He replayed everything in his mind, the wound, the slip, the gasp, the council's fury. Each time he told himself it had been an accident, yet each time the memory returned sharper, heavier. Then the door opened with a hiss. The Seraphim officer entered, her golden eyes glowing faintly under the light. She wore a ceremonial cloak now, deep blue with silver patterns that shimmered as she walked. The guards bowed their heads and stepped out, leaving them alone. For a moment neither spoke. She stood tall, her face calm, yet her eyes burned with something restless. At last she said, "Do you know what the bond means for my kind?" The medic shook his head, his throat dry. "You said it was for life. A ritual, a rule. That's all I know." She stepped closer, her cloak brushing the floor. "It is more than ritual, more than law. For the Seraphim, the bond is not just a promise, it is power. When 2 are joined, they share strength, memory, even life itself. We are taught to guard it, to keep it pure, to pass it only to chosen mates. It is why no outsider has ever touched it. Until you." The medic's heart raced. "But I don't feel any different," he whispered. Her lips tightened as though holding back words. "It begins small, a spark. But soon you will feel it. A thread between us, invisible, pulling, binding. Already I sense it. When I close my eyes, I feel your thoughts, faint like echoes in a dark cave. That is why the council fears you. They believe humans are too dangerous to hold such a key." He stepped back, shaking his head. "No, I'm just a medic. I don't want this bond. I don't want power. I just wanted to heal you." Her eyes softened, for the first time showing something like sorrow. "I believe you. But the bond does not ask what you want. It simply is." Silence filled the room. He felt a chill spread through him. Not from the air, but from her words. A bond that could share strength, memory, even life. That was no small thing. If what she said was true, he was tied to her in ways no human could ever understand. At last she spoke again, her voice lower now. "There is more. A truth my people do not share with outsiders. Long ago, our ancestors discovered that the bond, when awakened in battle, can shape energy itself. Some call it a gift, others call it a curse. Few survive its full power. That is why it is sacred. That is why we guard it." The medic's chest tightened. Energy, power? His mind spun. He had not just broken law, he had stepped into something ancient, dangerous. She turned away, her cloak sweeping behind her. "The council will not forgive. Some already whisper war, but there are others who watch with different eyes. They see possibility in you, a human bound to a Seraphim. That has never happened in the history of our stars. To them you are not a crime, you are a sign." Her voice lingered in the room like a shadow. The medic sat down slowly, his hands shaking. "What do you want?" he asked at last. She turned back to him, her face unreadable, her eyes glowing like fire behind glass. "I want to know if the bond chose by mistake, or by destiny." Before he could answer, the door opened again. A human officer stormed in, his face red with anger. "You," he barked, pointing at the medic. "The council may hold judgment, but your own commander demands answers." "What did you do to her?" The medic opened his mouth, but no words came. The Seraphim officer raised her hand, her voice sharp. "He saved my life. Without him, I would be dead," the human officer sneered. "And in saving you, he may have doomed us all. Do you not see? If your people think he broke your sacred law, they may take it as insult. And insult means war, a war we are not ready to fight." The chamber trembled under the weight of those words. War. The medic felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath him. The Seraphim officer stepped forward, her voice rising. Or perhaps you do not see, human commander. The bond is not just crime. It is connection. If we learn from it, if we understand it, maybe we find a path stronger than war. Her words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. The commander glared, but he said no more. He turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving silence behind. The medic looked at her, fear and confusion tangled inside him. Is this what you meant, destiny? That our bond could change everything? She held his gaze, golden eyes steady. Yes, change. Or destruction. I do not know which. But the choice will not be mine alone. It will be ours. The medic swallowed hard. He had wanted a simple life, a life of healing, not of war, not of destiny. But now he saw there was no going back. The secret of her species was no longer secret. It lived inside him now, burning like a hidden flame. And as he sat in that cold chamber under her watchful eyes, he realized with dread and wonder both, his life was no longer his own. The trial. The chamber of judgment stood at the very heart of the outpost, a great hall carved from black stone and reinforced with steel, its walls glowing with lines of alien script that pulsed like living veins. At its center was a raised circle, half for humans, half for Seraphim. And above it sat the council, elders of the Seraphim race, their silver skin glowing like starlight, their golden eyes sharp with centuries of wisdom and suspicion. The medic was led into the hall by 2 guards, his steps slow, his throat dry. Every whisper stopped when he entered. Humans on one side shifted nervously. Seraphim on the other glared with cold fury. He felt like prey dragged into the den of predators. The Seraphim officer, the one he had saved, stood a short distance away. She wore a cloak of white, the mark of truth, but her face was calm, unreadable. When their eyes met, a spark passed between them, the strange bond she had spoken of. He felt her presence like a faint echo inside his mind, steady and strong even though she did not speak. A great voice rang out, one of the elders. "Human medic," the elder boomed, his voice echoing across the chamber. "You stand accused of violating the sacred boundary of the Seraphim. By your hand. A bond has been forced where no bond should exist. Speak now, for your words will be weighed." The medic swallowed hard. His voice shook, but he forced it out. "It was an accident. I was only trying to save her life." My hand slipped. "I meant no disrespect, no crime." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some humans nodded, whispering, "Yes, he saved her." But the Seraphim crowd hissed, their golden eyes burning with anger. To them, accident or not, law was law. Another elder rose, her eyes cold as ice. "The bond is not accident. The bond is sacred. By touching, you claimed what was not yours. Do you deny this bond exists?" The medic froze. His mind raced. If he said yes, that there was no bond, he would call the officer a liar. If he said no, he would admit to something he never meant. He looked at her, the Seraphim officer, and saw her watching him, silent, her eyes glowing. He felt her thought faint in his mind, tell the truth. He took a breath. I don't know what to believe, but I know I felt something. When I touched her, it was not normal. It was not only flesh, so maybe the bond is real, but I did not choose it. It chose me. Gas filled the chamber. Some shouted in anger, others in shock. The words spread like fire. It chose him. The elder's eyes narrowed. "Then you admit it. You carry the bond. And so the question is this. Shall you be punished for the crime or protected for the destiny?" The trial twisted from that moment. Voices clashed like swords. Human commanders argued that the medic was innocent, that no man could be killed for saving a life. Seraphim elders thundered that law could not bend, that honor must be preserved. At last, the Seraphim officer stepped forward. Her cloak of truth rippled in the chamber's light. "I will speak," she said. Silence fell at once, her golden eyes blazed. "Yes, he touched the forbidden place. Yes, the bond has awakened. But I say this, without him I would be dead. My blood would stain the stars. He gave me life. And the bond, though forbidden, has not cursed me. It has strengthened me." The crowd roared, half in anger, half in awe. One elder rose sharply. "You defend him? Against your own law? Do you wish to break tradition for a human?" Her voice cut sharp as a blade. "Tradition is not stronger than truth. And the truth is clear, this human is not enemy. He is chosen." The word struck the chamber like lightning. Chosen. The medic felt the weight of it press into him, heavier than chains. He had never wanted glory, never wanted power. But now, in front of two species, he was named something he did not understand, something he could not escape. The elders murmured among themselves, their faces unreadable. Then the first elder lifted his hand. The council is divided. Some demand his death, some demand his protection. Until full judgment can be reached, he shall remain under guard. His fate will be decided in time. The guard seized him, pulling him back from the circle. The humans shouted in protest, but the Seraphim pressed them silent. The officer's eyes followed him as he was dragged away. He felt her thought again, soft and sharp, do not fear, but he did fear. He feared what was coming. The trial had not ended. It had only begun. As the doors closed behind him, he realized something worse than chains, worse than death. He was no longer only a medic. He was a symbol, a weapon, a threat. And soon he would learn that symbols are heavier than any wound, heavier than any bond. The enemy strikes. The medic's cell was silent, but not peaceful. He sat on the narrow bench, staring at the cold steel floor, his thoughts racing in endless circles. The trial still echoed in his mind, the words bond, chosen, crime. He had been a healer, nothing more. Yet now two species argued over his fate. He wished it were all a nightmare. But no dream could feel this heavy. Outside the cell, the outpost thrummed with life. Voices carried down the halls, boots struck against metal, engines pulsed beneath the floor. Somewhere in the distance, alarms whispered and then fell quiet. The medic could not see the stars, but he felt the vast emptiness pressing against the walls, reminding him that here, on the edge of human space, danger was never far away. Then it came. At first, a low rumble. The floor shuddered, dust shaking from the ceiling. The medic stood quickly, his heart pounding. The rumble grew into a roar, and then alarms blared through the outpost. Red lights flashed. A voice shouted over the comm, "Enemy contact! Enemy contact! All personnel to battle stations." The medic froze. Enemy? Who dared strike here? The door of his cell burst open. Two human soldiers rushed in, faces pale. "Move!" one barked, grabbing his arm. "We're under attack. We can't leave you here." They pulled him into the corridor where chaos reigned. Sirens screamed. Officers shouted orders, soldiers ran past with weapons ready. The air smelled of smoke and fear. The Seraphim officer appeared suddenly at the far end of the hall, flanked by her guards. Her golden eyes burned like fire even in the red flashing light. She strode forward, ignoring the confusion, her voice sharp and commanding. "The enemy is not here by chance." They knew where to strike. They knew we were divided. The medic stumbled closer, pulled by the soldiers, and met her gaze. He felt the bond spark again, stronger this time, like a thread tugging deep inside his chest. "What enemy?" He shouted over the alarms. Her jaw tightened. "The Krail." The name was enough to silence even the rushing soldiers. The Krail, an old enemy of both humans and Seraphim. Ruthless raiders of the void. They had no mercy, no honor, only hunger for conquest. Another explosion shook the walls. The lights flickered and smoke curled down the corridor. "They've breached the outer ring!" A voice cried through the comm. The officer grabbed the medic's arm, not gently but firmly, as if his life belonged in her hands. "Stay with me," she commanded. The soldiers hesitated, then obeyed her gesture, forming a shield around them as they pushed through the panicked corridors. The medic's legs shook with every step, yet he followed, pulled by her strength and the strange bond that throbbed between them. The outpost shuddered again, louder this time. Somewhere far above, metal screamed as if the sky itself was being torn apart. They reached a control chamber, half filled with smoke, screens flashing warnings. Human and Seraphim officers shouted at each other, trying to coordinate defenses. But chaos drowned their words. On the largest screen, the medic saw them. The Krail ships, black and jagged like monsters swimming in the void. They poured from the darkness in swarms, firing red lances of energy that tore into the outpost's shields. The officer's eyes narrowed. "They will break through in minutes," she said grimly. Then she looked at him, her gaze sharp, almost accusing. "And when they do, your bond may be the only thing that saves us." The medic staggered back.
"What? No."
"I told you I never wanted this. I don't even know how it works." She stepped closer, lowering her voice, though chaos thundered around them. "You do not need to know. The bond will act when it must. You felt it before in the chamber. It is inside you now, inside us both. When danger comes, it will answer." Her words chilled him more than the alarms. He was a healer, not a soldier. He knew medicine, not battle. But the way she looked at him, fierce and steady, made him wonder if she saw something he did not. Another explosion rocked the chamber. The screens went black, sparks showering. A voice screamed, "They've breached the inner hull!" The officer turned to her guards. Get him to safety. But before they could move, the ceiling split with fire. The wall exploded inward, and through the smoke poured figures of nightmare. The Krail armored in jagged black, their eyes glowing red, their weapons spitting fire. The soldiers raised their rifles. The guards unsheathed their blades. The officer stood tall, cloak whipping in the hot wind of destruction. And the medic! He froze, fear locking his body, his breath caught in his throat. One Krail warrior charged at him, weapon raised. He lifted his arms in reflex, useless against the strike. But then, the Bond answered. A spark shot through his chest, racing down his arms, flooding his hands with heat and light. His vision blurred, golden for a heartbeat. And when the warrior's weapon came down, it struck a shield of energy that burst from his palms. The Krail stumbled back, hissing in rage. Gasps filled the chamber. The soldiers stared. The officer's eyes widened, but not in fear, in recognition. The Bond awakens, she whispered. The medic shook, his hands glowing faintly, his heart hammering like thunder. He looked at the officer, his voice trembling. What did I just do? She stepped beside him, her eyes burning bright. You became what they fear most, a human who carries Seraphin power. Outside, the outpost groaned under the storm of battle. Inside, the medic stood trembling, his hands still glowing, his life forever changed. The enemy had struck. But so had destiny. The Bond awakens. The chamber burned with smoke and sparks, the air heavy with the roar of alarms and the cries of battle. The medic stood frozen, his hands still glowing faintly, his heart hammering against his ribs. Around him lay the shattered remains of consoles, and before him, the Krail warrior hissed in rage, its weapon still sparking from where the shield of light had flared. The Seraphin officer moved first. With a swift motion, she drew her blade, silver and curved, its edge glowing faint blue. "Stand with me," she commanded. Her golden eyes locked on his, fierce and unwavering. He swallowed hard. I don't even know what I did." "You will learn," she said firmly, stepping closer, her voice sharp but steady. "The Bond has woken. It will guide you. Do not fear it, trust it." The Krail screamed, rushing forward again. The soldiers fired, their bullets sparking off black armor. The guards clashed with blades, steel against steel, sparks flying. The medic stumbled back, fear clawing at him, but then it came again. The pull, the invisible thread between him and her. He felt her strength, her focus, flowing into him like a stream of fire. His trembling stopped, his breath steadied. And when another Krail lunged at him, his hand lifted by instinct, light bursting outward in a sharp wave that threw the enemy against the wall. Gasps filled the chamber. Human soldiers stared wide-eyed. Even the Seraphin guards looked shaken. The officer's gaze, however, only grew sharper. "Good," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The Bond is strong, stronger than I thought." He stared at his hands, glowing brighter now, fear mixing with wonder. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "I'm human. I shouldn't." But she stepped closer, her cloak torn, her face fierce. "The Bond cares nothing for race. It binds what it will. You are not only human now, you are Seraphin too." The words struck him like a blade, but there was no time to think. The outpost shook violently as another explosion thundered outside. A wall collapsed, flames pouring in. Through the smoke, more Krail stormed in, dozens this time, their red eyes burning. The officer raised her blade high. "With me!" she shouted. The medic's fear broke under the force of her voice. He felt her presence like fire in his veins, guiding his every move. Together, they charged into the storm. The soldiers fought bravely, rifles blazing. The guards cut down enemies with swift, precise strikes. But it was the Bond that turned the tide. When the medic reached out his hands, light streamed from them, forming shields that blocked enemy fire. When he swung his arm, waves of golden energy slammed into the Krail, scattering them like leaves in a storm. He moved clumsily at first, his steps heavy, his heart racing, but each time he faltered, her strength steadied him. Each time she struck, he felt it as if her blade was in his hand too. And slowly, terribly, the truth became clear. They were not fighting as two, but as one. The Krail fell back, snarling, confused. This was no ordinary human, no ordinary battle. They had come expecting weakness, division, chaos. Instead, they faced something new, something neither species had seen before. "Do you see it?" the officer shouted between strikes. "This is the bond. This is why my people guard it, and now it is ours." The medic's breath came heavy, his body trembling with the strange power coursing through him. He looked around at the destruction, at the wide eyes of soldiers and guards who watched him with awe and fear. "If this is power," he gasped, "then it's too much. I can't hold it." "You can," she cut him off sharply. "Because I am with you. The bond does not give more than we can bear. Trust it." Her voice burned through him, steady and fierce. He closed his eyes for a moment, and for the first time, he stopped fighting the power. He let it flow. The bond answered. Energy erupted from him like a wave of golden fire sweeping across the chamber. The Krail screamed as they were thrown back, their armor shattering under the force. The flames curled around soldiers and guards but did not burn them. Instead, it shielded them, wrapped them in light. When the blaze faded, silence filled the room. The Krail lay broken on the floor, the survivors dragging themselves back through the smoke. The outpost still burned, still shook, but for this chamber the battle was over. The medic collapsed to his knees, his body shaking, his hands dimming back to normal. He gasped for breath, sweat dripping down his face. Around him no one spoke. Humans and Seraphim alike stared at him as though he were no longer a man but something else entirely. The officer stepped forward, standing tall above him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, unshaking. "The bond has chosen," she said, her voice low but carrying through the silence. "And it has made you more than you were." The medic looked up at her, fear and wonder in his eyes. "But what if it made me something dangerous?" Her golden gaze softened, though only for a moment. "Then we will face that danger together. For the bond is not curse nor blessing, it is both. And now the council will have no choice but to see." Outside, the outpost still trembled under attack, the Krail ships circling like vultures. The war was far from over, but inside, in the heart of the flames, something far greater had awakened. The bond was no longer a secret. It was alive, burning, unstoppable, and the galaxy would soon learn its power. Word count. 820, the choice. The outpost was half in ruins. Smoke drifted through broken corridors. Fires burned in the distance, and the echo of battle still clung to the walls. Yet the Krail had been driven back. Their black ships retreated into the void, leaving behind wreckage and silence. But the silence was not peace. It was heavier, sharper. For now, two species stood together in the chamber of judgment. Humans on one side, Seraphim on the other, their eyes fixed on the medic and the officer who had fought beside him. The council had been summoned again. Elders of the Seraphim sat high above, their glowing eyes hard as stone. Human commanders stood tense, their faces pale but defiant. Both sides had seen what had happened in the battle. Both sides had seen the bond awaken, and both feared it. The medic stood in the center, his body weak, his mind still trembling from the power that had burned through him. He wished he could disappear, wished he could return to a life of healing wounds and saving lives quietly, but the bond did not allow that. The bond had dragged him here into the heart of judgment. The eldest Seraphim elder rose, his silver skin shining under the chamber lights. His voice thundered across the hall. "The human has touched the sacred place. The human has awakened the bond. And now we have seen its power. Power enough to burn our enemies, power enough to bind two species as one. The question remains, is this human a threat to be destroyed or a path to be followed?" The chamber stirred with voices. Some shouted for death. Others whispered of destiny. The medic's chest tightened. Never had he felt so small, so powerless, even though power itself now lived inside him. Then the officer stepped forward. She wore a new cloak, white trimmed with silver, the mark of one who speaks truth before the council. She looked at him once, her golden eyes steady, and then faced the elders. "I will speak," she said firmly. The hall fell silent. This human saved my life. Without him I would be dead and the bond would not exist. He did not seek it. He did not wish it. Yet the bond chose him. In battle it saved not only me but all of us. You saw it. The bond turned our fear into strength, our weakness into fire. Without him the outpost would have fallen. Her words struck hard, rippling through both sides. Some nodded in agreement. Others scowled, unwilling to yield. One elder hissed, "The bond is not for humans, it is ours. To let him live is to break all tradition. To let him live is to taint what is sacred. The officer's voice sharpened. Tradition will not protect us from the Krail. Tradition did not stop their ships from breaking our walls. But the bond did. If we kill him, we kill the future that saved us tonight. Gasps spread through the hall. The humans looked at her with surprise. The Seraphim murmured in anger and awe. The medic felt her words burn inside him. She was not just defending him. She was standing against her own people's law, risking everything. Another elder rose, her eyes narrow. Then let the choice be hers. If she defends him, let her claim him. If she denies him, let him be destroyed. The bond began with her. Let it end with her. The hall went silent again. Every eye turned to the officer. Even the medic froze, his breath caught in his throat. Her choice would decide everything. His life, his death, perhaps even the fate of their alliance. She stood tall, her cloak flowing around her, her golden eyes blazing with fire. Slowly she turned to him. For a heartbeat the world fell away. Only her eyes held him, steady, sharp, burning. Her voice rang clear. I choose him. The hall erupted, shouts of outrage, cries of shock, whispers of awe. Elders struck their staffs against the ground. Soldiers clashed with words, commanders demanded silence. But through it all her words hung in the air like fire that could not be quenched. I choose him, she repeated, her voice rising above the storm. Not because he is human, not because he is accident, but because the bond chose us both. And I will not deny it. The medic's knees weakened. He felt the bond spark stronger than ever, wrapping around his chest, burning into his soul. For the first time he did not resist it. He let it in. He felt her strength, her fire, her choice, and it became his own. The eldest elder raised his hand, silencing the hall. His eyes, sharp as blades, fixed on the medic and the officer. So be it, the bond is no longer secret. It is no longer forbidden. You have chosen, and so you will bear its weight, together. For if this path brings peace, you will be praised, and if it brings ruin, you will be cursed. That is the law. The words rang like judgment, final and heavy. The officer bowed her head once. The medic stood trembling, but he did not look away. He could not. The bond burned too bright. And so the trial ended, not with chains, not with death, but with a choice that would echo across the stars. As the hall emptied, the officer turned to him, her eyes softer now. Do you see, human? The bond has changed us. We cannot return to what we were. He nodded slowly, his voice low but steady. Then we go forward, together. Her lips curved just barely into something like a smile. Together. Beyond the outpost, the galaxy waited, watching, whispering, fearing. For now, two lives had become one, bound by accident, tested by war, and sealed by choice. And in that choice, the future of two species had been born.